Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Denise.
Let's do that again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Denise.
Thank you. All right, so we're here today to talk about communications, media, and outreach. And I think the reason I'm doing this presentation is that I proclaimed that I was good at this. So at the last one meeting, and Dan said, "Can you do this?" I'm like, first, I just want to say that I do not have a degree in communications, media, or outreach. I actually started as a business major at UVM for about 1 minute and then switched to humanities history major. So whatever I say is or is not true today. I just want you to know that up front. And I think there's actually probably as much expertise amongst all of you in this room as I have. I'm going to tell you my story. Who am I? And why am I good at media and talking to people and communications? That's me. That was our family picture in the 1980s. And I grew up in a family of 4 girls. And so I had to know how to communicate. I was the second of 4, which basically means you get ignored. So my job as a child was to communicate and to tell my parents what I needed in a very effective way, very loudly, because it was a French family and it was very loud all the time in my house. So my first lesson in communications, I would say, came from this lovely group of people that I call my family. This is my father, who passed away a few years ago. He was the loudest in the family and the person that you had to give your message to the most, because his rule ruled our home. And he, I think, had huge influence on my life. He was a lot of fun. He was always bringing people into the house, throwing parties. He just loved life. And he was also an engineer. And like I said, I think I said this at one of the club meetings. He was an engineer. He was a civil engineer. He taught at UVM. And our vacations consisted of visiting bridges. And every vacation consisted of visiting bridges in beautiful places where there was a lot of water typically. And so for a week, we would go on vacation. We would spend an hour visiting the bridge, and the rest of the time we would be on the beach because he loved beaches and he loved water. And I grew up, my house, I grew up in Charlotte, Vermont. So I grew up on the shores of Lake Champlain. It's about a mile from the lake. And I spent a lot of time biking to the Charlotte beach and enjoying the waters of Lake Champlain, not knowing that 40 some odd years later, I would be living, breathing, and talking about Lake Champlain all the time. Why I do what I do now? My father, as we traveled throughout the world and throughout Vermont and visited lots of beaches and places and bridges, we spent a lot of time on Lake Champlain and other bodies of water. And why I do what I do is to make sure that my 3 young children are able to enjoy what I was able to enjoy when I was a kid. So that's my story that I'm able to enjoy when I was a kid and still enjoy today. So I want you guys to reflect a little bit on why I told you this story. How did you feel when I was telling you this story? And did you care about what I care about? You guys can say no to all of these questions, but if you just want to take a few minutes and write something down, and then we'll have a little group discussion about it. So does anybody know why I told you guys that story this morning?
I think we all have stories about water, and probably if we didn't, we wouldn't be here. So my experience was growing up in Mooresville and being about 2 miles from our nearest swimming hole. And my sister and I would walk down and swim all afternoon at the canyon, and then we would walk all the way back up. And, 2 miles after you're swimming. But I mean, it's just, so basically out of this, before you ask those questions, I just said, we need to get stories of water experiences. And I was thinking that for the board of Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance.
Good. Okay. I like water experiences. Anybody else? Any one of those questions?
I would say even more fundamental, when you introduced your family, it was something that I think everyone can relate to in some capacity. I mean, we all have at least a parent, and probably most of us have siblings.
Good.
Yeah, that was my comment, was that there was something in your backstory, at least some aspect of it, that each of us could relate to and create a connection.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just want to underscore double the connections piece. That's what I've written down.
George?
Generation.
Anne?
Having people in the story is critical, and that's something that I struggle with Watersheds United Vermont members, is wanting to tell their personal story. They always want to list projects. And that can get kind of boring after a while. You never get to that in the people.
I just had one question. Do you think you would have the same interest in Lake Champlain if you didn't have children? Hardly.
Yes.
Because I
Yeah.
think it was instilled so much.
Yeah. Yes. It's great. It's a great question because a lot of people do this work do not have children. Communicating those are doing something so we have them around the room. Let me grab her and then I'll go back to you, George.
What I noticed about your presentation, you paid attention to your audiences in this room. Clearly, you know that we're all interested in the topic, and many of us have probably have families. Do you know your audience?
So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this hour-long presentation together. Thank you. Because we're going to come back to that.
And to go back to that, both of those issues just mentioned, though, it's critical that you get outside your own circle. And that's why I said generational, because even if you don't have children, you've probably got siblings or relatives who have children. And people have to understand this affects everybody.
Or you probably better shot.
Never been. But even if you haven't lived on the water, somewhere you've got an experience with somebody that does, and how water affects everybody.
I could have told many different stories. I chose that one for today, so it's really a really, really good point. Anybody else? Yes.
Denise, the first thing, I've been to more meetings than probably collectively anyone, everyone in the room. And the first thing that I need from the speaker, when the speaker begins, is to know something about your perspective. And you did that. Thank you.
Honestly, I think this is probably one of the most critical things about communication, is to know something about the person's perspective. Who's talking? I mean, the first thing I said is I do not have a communications background, and that probably everybody in this room collectively knows as much or more about communications and media than I do. That's a very true statement. So I appreciate that. And to know something about somebody's perspective when you're listening to them, I think is critical, because you need to be able to relate to the person that's sitting across from you. Anything else? Okay.
Anyone here?
Oh, I just like the fact that you did that all with pictures. That you used images to evoke something. I mean,
And did anybody notice there was not one picture of Lake Champlain?
Well, I pictured it a mile away from your house.
Yeah, but that's what I said that, right?
Yep.
There was not one picture of Lake Champlain.
Did you do that on purpose?
I did. Because my story relates to everybody, anywhere, that grew up. Right? And it related to her right away because she remembered when she was a kid walking to the water hole. Right? So it relates to anybody, anywhere that grew up, or was a kid, or has a kid. So that, I think, is one of the key things. So what, and I want to tell you my story first before I tell you what we're going to do next. So communications and media, I think, are about three things. And three things that people care about. And Anne asked me this question. How do we know if they're picking up our press releases? Right, so if you're putting a press release about a project out there, how do you know if they're picking it up? Sometimes you have to go back and see if they put it in the paper or not or whatever. But they'll pick it up if the story relates to them and their readers, okay? So I think there's four things that we're going to talk about today. You know, storytelling, and there's some great work being done right now by the Ben & Jerry's Foundation and Vermont Community Foundation. I went to a couple of their storytelling workshops that they did last year. And it might have been Common Goods Vermont that was also part of that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is where do we communicate our story? And I'm starting here, we're going to work a little backwards this morning. So what are the opportunities that you have to tell your story? We're going to do another brainstorming session here, and I just want you to throw out anything and everything that you think of. And then I'll explain. There's a lot. And if you guys can't come up with more than 20 this morning, there are a lot of places for us to be telling our stories. So I just want to go do a brainstorming session. So just start throwing things out, and I'm going to write them down.
Front porch forum.
Everybody know what FPF is? I think it's gotten around pretty widely now in the state. Okay, so everybody knows what FPF is, okay?
local newspapers, town newspapers.
Local paper, and I heard press releases. There's a lot of ways you can communicate with your local paper, so I just want to write that one down. Are there any other ways that you can communicate with your local paper?
Letters to the editor.
Letters to the editor. I'm just going to acronym that LTE.
Earned media, that was like.
Which one?
Earned media, you know, they come to a story.
So an earned media or feature. Very, very important, okay? So they come to an event, then they print your event in the paper, or they come and interview you,
Tell a story.
and hopefully tell the story.
Facebook.
Thank you. I think that was right up there. Facebook, Twitter, to tweet or not to tweet.
Local Rotary.
Rotary. Rotary, can I just write community groups?
No, for me, Rotary is very specific because I'm reaching the business owners. So it's different than just any other.
Okay, so Rotary, okay.
But I think I agree with Lori on Rotaries. I like going to them too. You get beyond the choir. But like-minded community groups, conservation commissions.
Newsletters? Newsletters, okay.
Print and media.
Print and e.
Events.
Demonstration project.
Demonstration projects, yeah. Okay. Now your events over here, Ann. So events, like you have a ramble coming up?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Events distinct from volunteer opportunities. To me, they're two different categories.
Can you clarify that?
Well, like an event, we do have a river race coming up, so it's about getting out, it's more recreation than restoration, whereas a volunteer opportunity, whether it's a planting or water quality monitoring, that's
On the water. Literally engaging people that are on the water, on the trail.
Yeah, why do we care about it if we don't see it? Or if we don't know we have access to it?
yeah.
Events, I'm also doing recreation. Maybe doing educational events, going to schools with water tables, farmers meetings.
Yeah, for schools.
Love did a great farmers meeting with watershed groups last fall. Was that last fall? So educational events. And I think are different than demonstration projects. That's a different category to me.
And I think there's different classes of educational events. There's reaching out to a certain population or the general population, and then schools, which to me sort of a very distinct category in how you might work with a school.
Maybe groups of stakeholders. Like having an event for the road foreman, different than having an event for farmers. What other ways can you guys help? Where can you tell your story?
Last year, we had a booth at the farmer's market weekly.
All summer? Wow.
July, August.
Good for you.
And the trick to that was having our homemade rain barrels, so they were locally made.
So you sold those at the farmer's market, so you had something to sell. That's
Oh,
awesome.
we also had our educational materials there and spoke with people. We didn't buy rain barrels,
Did they sign up and join your organization? Good goal. Yes.
Website.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to say website. Okay. Blogs, okay. Yes.
There's, in southeastern Vermont, Brattleboro, we have, it's called Strolling of the Heifers, and it's a green whole event in June, so we do a table there. And then there's Hogback, which is a wildlife, so we table there. And there's also, if we get our act together in Herrick's Cove, another wildlife, so
So we could call that maybe special events, like putting, it's kind of like the farmers make your, they have your table at a special event. So table at special events.
Two things. I don't think it's on there, but policymakers, I mean, we're not telling our kids today that things unfold.
Yeah, legislative events, right? You've been doing those quite a bit lately.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. We're going to call out to clean water and
And just a broader heading for some of these things, like partnering with Strolling of the Heifers, but really sort of strategic and creative partnerships.
Radio, TV, radio, TV.
See, I told you guys you were all experts at this. There's more collective wisdom in this room than I have in my head.
we've also had floats and parades, or just marched in local parades with our rain barrel.
Do you wear the rain barrel? That would be a bunch of rain barrels walking down in a parade. That would be eye-catching. good ones? What are you missing?
Like brochures, a print publication.
Yeah, print.
Print materials.
Your awesome Living in Harmony with the Streams brochure, is that your kind of thinking?
I was thinking more like an organizational kind of brochure, but certainly topical ones too.
Yes, Neil?
I like using the Watersheds United listserv to get information out.
The Watersheds United Vermont listserv. I'll just write
And meetings
listserv.
just like this.
That's good, because even the GIS has a good listserv that we get information out. George?
I'm not sure how to do this. We used to do it with architectural stuff, with community pie socials. I'm trying to think how this group puts that together, but what we did is brought the professionals into the community, had evening meetings, and then, had these so-called pie socials, people brought pies and stuff in the community. We ended up with getting a lot of volunteers that way, so.
I'm just going to call it a community pie, because everybody likes pie. Social.
We've gotten certain billing, shall we say, by attending Woodland Association. So all of those with the Woodland Association, one of our board members has gone and always promotes.
So kind of cross-networking with other groups. I'll just write cross-networking. Personal networks.
Let me just add a little bit to personal networks. Maybe more the non-traditional. Like I think about talking to my neighbors and we're all just sitting around on a Sunday afternoon, have a beer, and somebody says, "What are you working on?" Or somebody who's not in this room,
Water world.
in the water world, is often very interesting and surprisingly engaging.
So that's personal networks, but that's really doing more of an outreach, right? Or talking to people that aren't, talking to people outside of this.
Yeah, I bring it up because, sometimes you feel like you're talking about work, blah, 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 but people are always really interested to learn what's going on with the world of water. I'm surprised at how interested they are.
So I'm going to write outside of professional network, which is, I think, even different than personal network, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your friends kind of know what you're doing, but people that you don't interact with every day.
An expanded personal.
Expanded, yeah, that's a good way of writing it. Expanded personal. Yeah, those can be really fun conversations. Yeah.
This might fall under your events category. We're hosting an event next week where we have a guest speaker. It's kind of entertainment. So it's bringing in a lot of people who are really interested in the water being outside, but it's not an educational event. But what it's doing for us is exposing us to a whole new group of people that weren't already engaged with us. And it's getting me more volunteers, it's getting more advocates, it's getting more people to hear the message about stewardship and collaboration. So it's not an event about the Waterbury Reservoir, but it's bringing people in to have the conversation in kind of a unique way for us.
Who's the speaker that you're bringing in?
Willem Lang.
And okay, so the topic is totally, it's storytelling, right?
Storytelling about a canoe trip that he was on. So I'm bringing in people who care about the water, but they aren't necessarily specifically interested in the reservoir. It's just another way to get to like-minded people. And it's fun.
It's almost
Yeah.
pie social.
It's like a pie social, but it's like a topical thing that's about a canoe trip, not about the Waterbury Reservoir. Two more.
Agency of Natural Resources, our watershed coordinators throughout. For example, there's a town official education throughout the state, and Marie Caduto and the Agency Agency of Natural Resources will be presenting stormwater, so others, other than just our water world, if we can go right into your towns and try to get your select board members and town clerks and other people who, especially since we just have to do something. And those who are in where the budgeting happens, it would be very nice to have them attend one of these meetings.
Did you have another one?
Businesses, in a number of different ways, whether it's engaging their employees as volunteers, whether it's partnerships with businesses, finding, particularly businesses that have an outdoor orientation, they'll want to work with us on cleanup or something like that. Or going into businesses to speak. A couple examples that we've done are, well, I guess it's not IBM anymore, but they used to have a
Global Foundries or
yeah.
global.
Yeah, they had a lunch series that I've spoken at 2 or 3 times. Keurig, we took the flume into their employee lounge.
So businesses like lunch series are right here.
Yeah, or just speaking opportunities at businesses or taking advantage of their volunteer programs.
I'm going to stop here because we have 4 pages. Unless anybody else has something that has not been mentioned about where you can tell your story. One more?
It sort of just tying to that, there's some of these foundation organizations, businesses connect, they're involved in their own purposes and so on, that are interested in the greater good of the communities and so on. And there's both state and national levels for that, which gets back to funding sources.
So foundations, right? Because these are all people you want to tell your story to, so that hopefully they give you money, right?
Right, I was going to say, so what I was trying to do is start at the local level, get those relationships and keep building relationship forward so that you have the story that's important all the way to a national level.
I'll just do that. So that's your local, that's a little outside, and then all the way up to a national level.
Just because it hasn't been mentioned and it's a great captive audience, is places of worship, which is happening in our town right now.
Do you do it on a Sunday morning?
I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Actually, congregation members who are interested in it basically went to the pastor, enlisted the pastor, and yeah, it's done on Sunday morning.
T-shirts. Well, t-shirts can mean baseball caps.
Yes.
You're right. I mean, baseball caps, et cetera.
Walking home.
Swag. S-W-A-G. Yeah. My point in doing this is there's we just filled 4, and I do not have any handwriting, and I apologize for that, but we just filled out 4 pages. So my point in this is it's not free to get your story out there. This takes time, it takes energy, it can take dedicated staff people, it could take me getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and putting something on my Facebook page because I do that. It is not free. And if you're not getting your story out there, nobody knows who you are. Sorry.
That's all right. There's an important front point to this, though, is your organizational story being structured enough so that as people go forward, there's consistency in what you're saying. Soundbite is a critical part of communications.
Right. And we're gonna talk about that at the end. I heart soil. That's a soundbite right there. So we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But this is the next thing that we're going to talk about. So there's a lot of places to put your story out, right? There's a ton of opportunity to tell your story. My next question is who's listening? And is this the right audience? I don't know how to get that on my screen.
Just click on your.
Okay, yeah. There we go, okay. So my guess is my senator, one of them, is not on Facebook. So for me to reach him is a completely different approach than how I'm going to reach my other senator, right? So this is where, and this is what I want to talk about next, and I think this is going to come from you guys as well. The stories we tell and who we're telling them to is critical. The other thing I would say, you'd be surprised at the number of farmers who are on Facebook and the number of farmers who watch Channel 15. So there's a ton of ways to get our stories out. There's a ton of ways to tell our stories. The question next is who's listening and why do they care, right? And this is where you sort of take these pieces and you have to kind of incorporate them all into your communications plan.
I was curious, I don't know your name in the desk over there.
I'm Lori from Friends of Waterbury.
Okay, Lori,
That's okay.
I'm just wondering if Lori could share, you're saying you're going to have this event, you're bringing in people who are not within your usual structure. How do you know you're going to get anybody?
Well, we marketed, is it okay?
Yeah.
We marketed the event using Eventbrite, first of all, which was a really great tool for managing subscriptions and enrollments and ticket sales. But we got the word out almost everywhere that's on that list. Front Porch Forum is a really great venue for us. It's always been successful. Facebook has been really reliable for us, and the advantage of Facebook is it gives you the demographics of who we're reaching. Our listserv, the newspaper ads, which don't seem to pay off for us, word of mouth, and old-fashioned flyers like I have on the table. So I know that I'm not getting people that are normally on my list because I'm looking at who the ticket sales are coming from. They're not people that are on my mailing list. They're not people that typically that are on my Facebook page. So they're new. I know they're new for us. Did I answer your question?
And I think that's, when you think about doing an event, because they are time consuming, and if you think about creating an event that's different than your regular events and the number of people that you can draw in that are not your regular suspects that are involved in water world already.
The other thing that we found was really helpful about this event is we offered a silent auction. And so we were able to reach out to businesses that we don't normally interact with or haven't so far. And I'm delighted to learn how many businesses or business owners say, I'm out on the reservoir all the time. I kayak out there, I canoe out there, I watch the moons out there. And these are people that I would not have otherwise engaged with, and they've been very generous in their contributions for a silent auction. That brings more people in, it's good for their business. It's been really successful. It's our very first fundraiser, and I think it's going to be really successful. All indications it's next week. This is why I'm here.
Okay, I might come. Yes.
Is yours just very specifically like a reservoir area that you're overseeing?
I don't want to take up too much of the speaker's time, but yes, the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir is concerned about the reservoir itself and the lands that surround it.
Okay, because southeastern Vermont watershed is huge in the sense of to reach out and know businesses throughout and that kind of thing. So I think maybe if somebody has a way of sharing or you have ideas of how to pull, happens to be that 3 of the now 4 board members are all from the same town.
Yeah, so that would be the one thing I would start with. You need people in multiple communities. We made a strategic change in our board and have 2 people from Swanton. I mean, we cover the entire Northern Lake, which basically we kind of consider from Colchester north or South Hero, Milton north. And we have board members throughout, so that's a critical piece of making sure your organization represents your geographic region.
I can just comment on that too. I'm trying to cover the Winooski, which I'm not
Yeah.
arrogant enough to say we cover the Winooski. But what we've found is people relate on a smaller scale. They relate to the Dog River, they relate to the North Branch. So we have really tried to build sort of smaller communities within the Winooski River watershed and really get those people connected with each other and with us.
So I think this is really good, because basically what you're taking is this huge amount of information and you're trying to make it so it matters, right? To that person that's right there. You know, why would somebody in Richford care about northern Lake Champlain? You know, they don't. So how do we engage them in the conversation in a way that they can or they will, or they have some skin in the game? And I think that's what we're all trying to do when we talk about watersheds. So who's our audience? And we sort of got into it a little bit at the end there, you know, the legislators, the business owners, community members. I think that having this conversation right now, because I think the strategies to communicate them is different, to communicate to them is different than in every case, right? It's different in every case how you're communicating your story. And doing unique events that are bringing in different types of people to your organization or your cause or what you're trying to do. And maybe we could all just throw out an example of something that we've done to do that. A few years ago, we started the Bike for the Lake. And it's in South Hero, and it's a 100-mile loop around the lake. You can do a 75, a 50, or a 25. The first year we did it, we had 25 people. And that was before my time. I took it over, and we had 180 people. And last year we had over 300. And it's all people that are not members of FNLC. Because we're in a whole different league of biking people that are slightly crazy. But they are a whole league of people, and they have networks of bikers, and they come from Canada, and they come from Saranac Lake, and this is what they do, is bike. They could give, they could not care about Lake Champlain, I don't think. They don't know what's going on. They are these people that they ask, well, what's the problem? Is it the boaters? You know, they're kind of this sort of, and what, you know, the last one we hosted was last summer, and the question I kept getting from the people that came is, well, what do you do? You know, what is Friends of Northern Lake Champlain doing to clean the lake? So there was like it's an opportunity as much as it is an outreach, fundraiser, it's an educational opportunity where you're able to provide that information. Again, it's not free. It's a ton of work. It takes a lot of my time to put that thing together. I've even hired somebody this year to run it for me. But it is a lot of work. But the amount of people, because of that have now sent me a membership check is worth it. And we make a profit on the bike. So, but it is work, and it does. So that's where it's really important that when you do these events, that you're thinking, how is this benefiting the friends of the Waterbury Reservoir? How is this, what can I tell what's my story after the event? You know, am I bringing new people in to care about what I care about? Kim?
VRC does this Wild and Scenic Film Festival, and it's similar. It's a ton of work, not for me personally, so I love it. But we do a silent auction, and it's most of the people that show up say, "Who's VRC? What is this? What do you guys do?" And we do a silent auction, and it's usually a lot of younger people. Our membership tends to be an older demographic, and it brings in an opportunity for us to speak very briefly about VRC and what we do, and
So we call it the BNRC, I'm sorry, I'm just
It's
gonna
called
write
the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. It's a national festival, I think, that goes around, and we sponsor it with,
I'd love to go around the room. It doesn't have to be event specific. Another thing I instituted when I started, I had a relationship with Channel 15 and they were looking for nonprofits to come in and do a monthly show. So I said, sure, I'll do a monthly show. I was learning so much about water world that I was like, I could start bringing speakers on to tell the rest of the people in Franklin County, Grand Island County about this. So I'd love to hear, maybe we can go around the room and everybody give us kind of a snippet of information about how you're reaching people, different people like you guys do, or the same people. I'm gonna start. Okay. Skip. You can say Skip. Sorry. Anything?
It's similar. We have an event really, it's called Run the Day Rally over here. It has really nothing to do with the work that we do, but it brings in that group of athletic folks and we charge them a lot of money.
What is it?
A Run the Day Rally.
Run the Day?
You skin up a mountain, you ski down, and you run back up and ski down. It's pretty brutal and crazy.
When I know small children, not yet. That sounds good.
We usually do it at Burke, so it's a partnership with Burke. So, but again, it's kind of like your bike. It really reaches an audience that has probably no interest. They don't. We do the same thing. We do a little spiel about the center, but really it's fun to raise there. But it's also been good that it gets a lot of press. So I think we get more value out of the press than the actual
media.
Yeah.
They love that.
They love that crazy.
They do. So they write stories about you, which is what you want. Wayne.
Lake Champlain International.
I just heard you on the radio this morning. Not you, but the organization.
The organization, we have a big fishing tournament once a year. It's actually another one. 7,000 people participate. And so we have all those folks in the mailing list. And actually, the last 6 months or so, I've been in newsletters. So we do newsletters each month that go out to the mailing list of about 6,000 people. And of course, then we do a lot of other communications. So generally, getting information out. And, sometimes controversy.
Yeah, the controversy is fun. Something controversial to show you after. Yeah, that's where messaging comes in. We'll talk about that a little bit too.
A little controversy is always
good or bad, as long as they're talking about you, right? That's one of the things they say in communication school, if I had gone.
I was out of the room when you were giving me instructions, but I think I'm on the right track here.
I'll tell you.
We really look for some really strategic leveraging opportunities. So matching up, so just by way of an example, so through Farm to Plate and a whole new coalition, we're bringing the food system and the solid waste world together in ways that have never existed before around organics, managing organic materials. So that kind of thing just opens up the world in really different ways.
So leveraging opportunities with partners that are
With
doing,
partners
that are part of the system, part of the causal loop.
Just figuring out those really strategic partnerships that just sort of bust open a whole new area for you.
I'm just going to write that bust open, because I like that. Other partners, right? And opportunities.
Yeah, for everyone to do the work that they want to do.
Yeah, that's good. Do you have anything? Skip? Just say Skip, it's okay.
We're actually found an avenue that's been very successful for us in getting our message out. A couple of years ago, I contacted the Rosalia Project for a Clean Ocean. They're a Vermont-based organization. You may be familiar with them. They've done a lot of work on Lake Champlain. And we started what we think is the first of its kind in the country. It's a trash data study specific to the reservoir. So the goal of the study is to figure out what kind of trash is on the reservoir, how it's getting there, when, how it might be getting redistributed, and really get a handle on how bad the problem really is or isn't, with the goal of giving some good, clear data to the Agency of Natural Resources so that they can make some management decisions about the use of the reservoirs, especially the remote campsites that have dotted the shores of the reservoir for years. Some people will say, oh, the reservoir's patched, and other people will say, I don't see it. It's not a problem, don't change anything. But anecdotal observations don't help. So last year we started with what we call phase 1 of the study, just getting a baseline. Where do the biggest pockets of trash seem to be? When are they arriving? Is it really just the motorboaters that are showing up at the sites and just trashing them? Or is it something else? So in that partnership with the Rosalia Project, we had access then to their data cards and their system of tracking data. And they gave us a lot of technical support and time. They also gave us a college intern for the summer. We also partnered in that with starting this year with Courier Green Mountain. They're going to allow their employees to dedicate some of their community service hours to clean up on the reservoir. So we'll have a ready cadre of good, solid, trained volunteers to do the trash data study. So we'll know it's reliable. We can send them where we want to go based on last year's data. Obviously, we tie into Green Up Vermont as our launch date. We have an ambassador with the organization who's a local environmental analyst. He's leading the project. Vermont State Parks has been totally on board. They have a relationship with the Rosalia Project, and obviously this benefits the resource. So this whole project that started out with, Vermont State Parks wanting to manage these campsites and turn them into a paid reservation system to hold on. Let's figure out if there really is a problem or not. Let's get some data. It's been vital for us to achieve our mission of collaborating with stakeholders, getting the community involved. We have a nationwide partner that's given us a lot of press, both on print press, online, on their blogs, on their websites, the student interns blog, without a whole lot of work from us now that it's going.
I just want to say that it's like so the communication skills that are required you guys to do that, though, is huge to get all of these.
It is.
Very
I think the core
strategic
message to
partners.
the core message to this really has been stewardship. It's getting people out on the water. It's getting people to care. It's photographing the trash. It's photographing the events. We tied in the American Rivers cleanup last August, where we encouraged Green Mountain as one of our primary volunteer sources. We photographed that.
Are you saying pictures? Like your
Absolutely, pictures everywhere. Yep. When people are out there camping.
We all have phones with cameras on them now. We've never had that before.
So take pictures of the guys that you're finding. Go to a remote campsite, and I post something on the website, how not to engage in leave no trace camping. Photos of the trash in the boats as we haul it off. Photos of people pulling the tires out. This is not new. We all do that.
Take pictures, put them somewhere, post them, national partnerships.
It's a way to get people to care. And if I can engage Girl Scout and Boy Scout troops to get out there, having Courier Green Mountain be our volunteers eliminates the liability risk of hiring a volunteer. Now I've got workers' comp to deal with.
Yeah, good, excellent. And you're communicating a huge project.
It's a ready press release every month.
It's ready press release. Kim, you gave yours already, okay. George, do you have anything?
Well, just similar to that, only in a different industry, that where you start out with the small groups locally, work your way with those people with faces, identifications, members, getting your own website, getting those pictures on the website, then continue to grow that, go out to other state and federal organizations. I started with an old traditional, quickly. Started out with the U.S. Forest Department, worked backwards, got involved so that we now have a Wood Manufacturers Association, which self-sustaining has been running for years. But the bottom threshold for this was it took 5 years of feeling like it was going nowhere, and then it started to go from there. So the warning is don't expect to jump and go right away, but build a good, strong base.
buffers, both
Well,
run.
that, I think that was.
And, so the Northern Star is a boat that, this summer we're doing
I
an
know where the Northern Star is at the boat launch in Newport, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
so that's what we're using this summer. Last summer, we used another boat, but big boat, so we can take a lot of people out. And we're combining with the craft beer industry to,
What's it called? Beers for Buffers?
beers for buffers. And then Copeland.
Send a date.
So, this past summer, Ben Copans went with us and pointed out features of good buffers and not so good buffers along the shores of Lake Nempramego.
Oh, cool. Good buffers and bad buffers. Did you say bad or not so good?
I said not so good.
Okay, bad. All the same, same. Okay, good.
And I'll pass for Lakes and Ponds program.
Okay. No pass. Okay.
My name is Gordon Batchelor, and Charlie Limited. The banquets are pretty important. We bring in a lot of members who ordinarily don't attend chapter meetings or community people, and it's an opportunity to tell them about the projects we're working on. And
What did you call it?
Charlie Limited.
Yeah, but what was the?
Banquets.
Banquets.
Annual banquets.
Where you sit down and
Dinners,
eat.
banquets.
Banquets,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, okay.
Yep. So
So that's like kind of a community pie.
they
dinner
bring in a
kind
lot of
thing.
people, and it's an opportunity to tell them what we're doing.
And what brings them there? How do you get them there? What's the
It's a
strategy?
social. It's a social. Good food. Good.
And do you do those statewide?
Each chapter usually does.
Does a banquet for the travel limited folks? Is it a membership? Where do you raise money?
It's a fundraiser, and the members are invited, but we are finding that other community members come as well.
Excellent. And?
On water events for us, whether it's the Sojourn, which we haven't done in a number of, 3 years now, which was our 6-day trip on the Winooski, or the race. This will be our 2nd year for the race. We also do just some more informal paddles. It's really recreation opportunities is a great entree to people. And if they're paddlers, they should have some connection to the water. I mean, still get checks every year from people that came on one day of the Sojourn 8 years ago. And I haven't seen them since. So they really help us expand. People have some connection to the water already, but to get them to think more, less, not just about it as a recreational resource, but how they can be engaged in protecting it.
Can you give me a time check?
4 to 6.
We have until 11?
11?
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're not going to go over.
There's been mention of silent auctions, but because we're so diverse, one year was fairly successful of doing a raffle where we made up tickets and we pre-sold them, and the person who won it, somebody who was working for EMS, I believe it was, got a kayak. And so basically, we kept everything separate. We just pulled, they could put their tickets in whichever one, and we pulled a winner.
And did that help get new people, new businesses involved in your organization, or was it more?
I think it was more of the actual fundraising.
There's outreach that's,
Yeah.
they get about and request those items, right? So they're like, why am I giving this organization an item, right? Similar to what you were saying, the businesses care about the Waterbury Reservoir in your region. So telling them, you still have to have a story.
Sure.
Because they need to hear a story to give you something.
Well, as I say, one of our board members worked for that store. Whether we received any new members or anything other than the money for the tickets, I don't know.
That's where spreadsheets come in handy.
Yeah, this was
Long spreadsheet.
9
Spreadsheets last forever.
Bob Klein was representing Lewis Creek Association, and instead of offering a success story, I just want to challenge So we're doing a lot of work on a couple of watersheds that that have important ecological values and impact Lake Champlain water quality, but to themselves they're not recognized as real recreational assets. It's not like the Waterbury Reservoir, where people are coming to recreate there. So that's one of the challenges, is to get people to appreciate the importance of these sort of low-profile watersheds. And making the connection to Lake Champlain recreation is, it's tricky. And something else that's just, a thought that's come up throughout this discussion is, and this gets back to, I think it's George's point about messaging. It's great that there's all these photos coming in to our inboxes, but, how do you make yours the one that gets opened and read?
Right, there's a lot of places, there's a lot of.
We're not the only ones doing this, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. So actually, that's a great segue. We only have 10 minutes left, and the next piece of this is so we've talked kind of about where do you communicate. You have a lot of options. Who are you trying to communicate to? And I think that's where you need to listen and find out what people are watching, doing, listening to, and also know your audience, right? I mean, I know that one of my senators is never going to be on Facebook. So how do I communicate with him, right? Face to face, I call him, if that's my goal. The other one I know is on Facebook pretty regularly, I can reach him there. So, but there's all these different ways that you have to communicate your message. So the last piece of this is your message. And this is the key, and this is where you have to know people smarter than you. Or you have to be willing the reason I say this is because the next few things I'm showing you were not just my idea. Okay, this was a brainstorming idea. I had the idea of Green Lake State, across that mountain. Alicia had the idea to put it on a license plate. This was we put this on a poster board for the State House. I wanted to make a banner out of it, and I got shut down. Because, there's some people that just don't like this message because it's a little controversial. However, it really got us an entry into our conversation at the State House this session. But this idea was a collaboration, and I have an extremely good design team in the St. Albans Messenger print design group that can take my and other people's ideas and turn them into things like this. So that's where the messaging piece, and it's sensitive. There's some sensitive messaging that's going around this stuff, this Wayne said, sometimes controversial. And so I think that that's really key. This was another piece of a PowerPoint presentation I did. This was an ad in Vermont Digger in August 2014. So when I did a presentation to our legislators, because that's one of the groups we're trying to communicate with this year, I showed them this picture, which was an ad that the state of Vermont is trying to promote tourism because of this beautiful picture of our lake. This was in Vermont Digger, August 2014. And then I showed them this picture because this is what our lake looked like in August in 2014. So when you tell me that Lake Champlain is not an economic development issue, I disagree. You can't sell the state of Vermont if Lake Champlain looks like that. Slightly controversial, slightly sensitive, but it got to the point. And H35 passed out of the House 133 votes to 11, including all of my Franklin County Republican representatives who said they would not raise new taxes this year. That was my message to them. Did it work? I don't know. See how it goes in the Senate.
Denise?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to point out the target group that you.
Yes, yep. I was working very, very specifically on people with a very specific message, to get them to act in a very specific way.
Because everybody has to be concerned about unforeseen consequences. If that message all of a sudden went on a broader scale, nationwide, say, and in fact, we want to promote our tourism economy in the state of Vermont, and that turned out to turn everyone away, then we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot because the economic values coming to the state, and in fact, we provide the money, we provide support to what we want to do in the first place, could draw applicants.
Thank you, Megan. This is, so we did something very unique this year. We've never done it before. The brewery, the local brewery in Franklin County, offered to release a beer for us. Gave me 2 weeks to plan a party, literally 2 weeks. And we had an idea to call the beer Save Our Lake Ale. I gave this to Messenger Print Design. This is the artwork my smarter than me people came up with. Some people, I got a note on my Facebook page, that's the most offensive image ever. I know it's art. But, and we raised $2,500 at one very short beer party at the new local brewery in St. Albans. It was a huge success. Tons of new people came that have never been, and we raised $800 and almost $1,000 in new membership. So, the other thing I just want to, for you guys to take away with you today, take opportunities where they are. And again, it's not free. This stuff is work. But take the opportunities where they are. The last point I want to make, and this kind of gets back to your thing, like, why is nobody listening? What's your story? It takes 8 touches. And this is something I learned, I can't remember where, but if you're going to put an ad in the paper, you want to know why it's not successful. Who said they put an ad in the paper and here and there? People don't see it. They don't see it the first, second, third time. They need to see it 8 times. I'm one of those people. Ann sends me 8 emails a day, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. My inbox is full, and my life is busy, and I've got pictures all over the place. And, we're just trying to, I think this is the busiest time we've ever been because we're so connected, and communication is bigger than it's ever been. Look, we have 4 pages of things that you guys can do to go and get your message out right now. And all of them require work, they require time, and they require effort. So that's why it's really key that you're strategic about who you're trying to reach, what they're reading, what they're listening to, and how you get across to them. Because you can't do all that. You can't. Especially if you're a staff of 1 or a group of volunteers that don't have a staff person. You shouldn't feel bad about that. But you have to start. And you have to figure out what your message is, who's it going to, and what you're trying to do. So it takes 8 touches before somebody will even pay attention to you, though. And I think one of the most effective ways to communicate, at least in my local region, letters to the editor. People do not read the Messenger. They read Emerson Lynn's editorial. If you have a local paper and you don't know your editor, take them out to lunch. Take your newspaper writers, your article girls there. No, that's bad. Article girls are reporters. Thank you for the word. Thank you. The very good reporters we have. Take them out for coffee. Sit down with them. Find out what they care about. Get them to care about what you care about. But that is, the letters to the editor, I think, are extremely effective in my local paper. And Channel 15, surprisingly enough, people watch public meetings on a pretty regular basis. And if you can get yourself a little half-hour show once a month, get on it. Yes?
There's got to be some value, though, in unification. Meaning, each group has their own area, their own thing. There's got to be a way so that those all draw together to have a message that can go statewide. Because who's in Brattleboro needs to know they've got support of somebody that's in Franklin County and that the values are the same. And so the person that lives in the middle of the state can say, why should I care? This whole issue came up when they started talking about the tax issue around cleaning up the lake. Why should somebody in the middle of the state, say Champlain, care about supporting Champlain because they're 25 miles away from the lake. So if there's unification of people from all over the state through your organizations, that's going to have an impact. It also has an impact on this legislative group because you all have legislators. If they find out that you people, meaning not you here, all your members are involved, who are therefore the people who vote them in, they have to now start paying attention. But you need something that shows you are larger than just that project that you're involved with in your community.
And I think that's part of the reason we created the Watersheds United of Vermont group, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, so that we do have a more unified voice and message that we can share. We all live in a watershed, and we all impact it on a daily basis.
You know that, but there's a lot of people who don't.
Oh, there's a lot of people that don't know that. And how do we get them to care about the water? I will give one last plug for the Age team put together a film called What's Your Watermark? It was done in partnership with Clear Water Filtration Systems. If there is a group, we actually hosted another event that we organized, and we hosted a public screening of that film during our board meeting last month. And it's 40 minutes, it's a little long, but it's extremely well done. It's a very balanced story, and it really gets a lot of people to think. Actually, one of my board members that just saw her yesterday, she goes, my husband's killing me, he's so mad at me right now. I disconnected my downspout from the driveway, and now I'm redirecting it to the garden. So she had to go out and have him buy new piping and fixing and stuff like that. And she goes, it was all because of the film. Nothing that I've sent to her, nothing that I've done, but she watched the film, and Megan Moyer's on there talking about, disconnect your downspout, don't let it drain into the driveway. That's the biggest way that you can convey water to your...
What's the title?
What's Your Watermark is the name of the movie.
Watermark?
Yeah. But you got to use those opportunities. When people from the media call you, don't shy away from talking to them, but make sure you know what your message is and what you're trying to get across, because they will change it if you don't. Right? Right. We've learned. So you have to make sure you know what your message is and what you're trying to convey to them, because otherwise it could get twisted. Any other questions? Did I not cover something?
Well, I just wanted to go back and comment. Watersheds United is about us communicating with each other and building our capacity. And I think having some common messaging and themes is good. But what I find is important is making that local connection, and I think that's a lot of what did ultimately begin to happen with H35 is, yes, it was being driven by the lake and the mandated need to clean up the lake, but I think the message also had to be that this is about all of Vermont's water resources. This is about the stream in your backyard. I mean, the Winooski is the largest tributary to the lake, and I'll be very candid in saying I don't really talk about the lake all that often. I do when it's an audience where I think that's going to resonate, but if I'm going to talk in Northfield, I can't even really talk about the Winooski. I have to talk about the Dog River. And so I think there's a balance there of having, common themes and objectives and goals, but understanding that for some audiences, it's got to be motivated on a very local level.
I agree.
And I think one of the things we tried to do at the Clean Water Day that we had at the State House, for instance, was to bring those local stories to the center. So instead of having a uniform statewide message, we had a bunch of individual messages, local messages that reinforced, what we were trying to get done. So I think that's a way of bringing the whole state together without trying to make everyone say the same thing statewide.
But I'm speaking outside of this realm. I understand I'm unfortunate. I'm here for Alicia, and my expertise for the last 2 years was with the wood industry, which I've got scars all over me, from everything from loggers to whatever. But the point was, we had people, the craftsmen, the people who build furniture, the people who do the work as the stars. But then there had to be a unification of how that affects, how many of them are there in the state? What is the size of the state? What is the value for me to give you attention, to care what you're doing? And the way we had to do that was then to take this out and blow it out and show that, the 20,000 people who work in this industry, the impacts it had on the whole state. You've still got the star that makes that really beautiful rocking chair or the other furniture, whoever it is. But you had to show the value as a whole program of why I should even pay attention to what you're saying.
And that's what this is.
Yeah.
I didn't give a plug to this, but this is that piece that kind of takes all those individual stories and says, well, what does this amount to when we add it all together? So we are trying to do that. And anyone who hasn't seen this publication, they're available for people to take and hand out. We want to make sure they take it out.
And then there's also needs to be the support backwards from that to holding events in these other communities by the statewide program. Because the other thing we do is the competitions and the stuff that happens around the state, and they move from site to site in order to draw the attention to that area.
Yeah, and I think the first month, or was that when we did the Ben and Jerry's, Ann took us on a tour of some of her, of a stormwater project. That was sort of my first exposure to other watershed groups after I started in my role with president of Champlain, and doing that, very valuable. I mean, I'm excited about the year of the buffers.
Yeah.
We're going.
Yeah.
And the cross-linking is crazy, because one of the things we ended up with was Cabot Cheese.
Yeah.
Supporting our industry with putting ads on their butter boxes all the way down into Florida.
So you're
So
leveraging,
figure out how that
leveraging, right? You leverage
Oh, yeah.
a partner.
But how do you get butter and wood together? I mean, how's that happen?
Totally makes sense.
It's because it's a natural product within Vermont and has a Vermont heritage. That's what really drove it.
Were you going to say something?
It was, one of the efforts that we're doing in terms of communication is a phrase that I came up with to build a reservoir community. And I actually capitalized reservoir community, because what I'm trying to do is create a sense of belonging. We have the motorboaters who find the kayakers annoying, and then we have the kayakers who are getting buzzed by those damn, jet ski things. So it's this sense of us against them. So building a sense of community where people feel like they belong and they have a stake and a say and an interest in communicating as part of almost a family. A group of people who all care about the same place starts to bring in user groups who think they're in conflict to realize, oh, wait a minute, we do have something in common. We do love this place. We do find this to be a spiritual place, or a great place to fish, or a place where I bring my family, or whatever it means to me. And that's, once we came up with this reservoir community idea, that became central to our communication plan. And it's something we reflect every communication, every press release, every advertisement on. Does this fit our vision, mission, and core values, and does it build community?
That's awesome. One of the things that we did this past year, we hosted an event at the State House with the St. Albans Messenger, and Alicia and I came up with these stickers that basically said all in. And then all of a sudden this event was being referenced as the all in event at the State House. I was like, it was a very organic thing that happened, and now we're using it similar to the reservoir community, but getting all in. Let's all care about this. This is it's bigger than just me and my piece of land. It's everybody that's making an impact on this water, and we're hoping that it's going to help to mitigate some of the problems between the shoreline owners and the farmers in our region.
It helps the way I engage with people. If I come across an angler or a boater on the reservoir, I give them my business card, and I see that you're a member of the reservoir community. And what does that mean? As soon as I engage you, I'm recognizing that you are part of the community that I'm in. And so I want to engage you, and I'm expecting that you'll be involved and that you'll have a voice. I want you to join the conversation.
That's awesome. Yeah, right. Those two things, all in and the reservoir community, are very welcoming approaches to the solutions, I guess I would say. It's good. So simple though, right? I love soil.
Yeah.
I heard soil. Simple.
I think just maybe ending with that note, we need to be positive in our letters to the editor. When we did source to seek cleanup, you know, we've got a very popular site where we picked up, you know, diapers and all sorts of things. So one of the people, one of my board members, ended up writing, and I don't think we should write those letters. So I think welcoming community, positive.
Yeah, and I even notice on my Facebook post, if I post something positive, I get many more likes than if I post something slightly negative. So, you know, again, people don't want to go to Facebook and see negativity. They like going there and see nice things. So, you know, start judging, looking at that for yourself. What's happening when you post on sites or what's getting traction. Yes.
One of the simplest and free things that I do that get the most play on my Facebook page is a reservoir minute. I literally, maybe with my cell phone or a good camera, I literally just take a short film. It's only 60 seconds long, and it tells the story. Those get the most play every single time. And sometimes businesses will pick it up. Umiak Outfitters has picked it up.
And
I
put it on their
had a
Facebook
short
page.
57-second video of some cormorants in the rain. They posted that on their page, and they used it to market getting their kayaks out there. I don't care. This is engaging with the community. Umiak's an important partner of ours. It's free. It took me literally 57 seconds, plus the however to put it on the Facebook page, and it plays.
Anybody else?
Well, we can send you over, and I don't know how that kind of technology in comment about this thing where we had people put like this hashtag thing up on Facebook, so we're kind of getting their stories, and there was some sort of really, I know it was very successful, according to other people. It's capturing their story, their picture, basically.
So I'd like to ask the question, to tweet or not to tweet. I sort of joked about it earlier. Is anybody on Twitter? Okay, so yeah, I'm on now. Woohoo! But I had my tech guy who's smarter than me link my Facebook to my Twitter account. I still haven't figured out the hashtag thing, but we're going to get there in the next year. But, you know, I actually did a poll thing for a while. It was like when I first started, and I was asking the teens, because I was like, old people don't know about Twitter. So I was asking like the high school students and, you know, not people in my generation, but maybe the 20, 30-year-olds. Are you guys Twittering? Who's Twittering? And people were like, no, we don't really Twitter. But now it seems like businesses, or a lot of businesses and companies are Twittering and tweeting. But I don't want to do any more than I have to on my laptop in one day. So if I'm posting something on Facebook, so I asked my guy, and my Facebook feed is on my website too. So I do one post, and my news, my daily news. I still have a blog, and I have some other stuff on my website that I have to update. But I have one place where I post something on Facebook and it shows up on everything. So if you know somebody who's smarter than you, have them do that, because it's. And then you can say when somebody asks you if you're tweeting, you can raise your hand and say tweet. Really, because people aren't following Twitters.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Several years ago, we had a communications person work for a while, and she set up a Twitter account for us, and she got it linked to Facebook. And I didn't know that link was there. Yeah, so we were tweeting, but not to my knowledge. And we have I don't know even how many Twitter followers we have. We have, I think, a couple hundred. And it's a reminder to me, personally, it's sort of like I find this short communication to be, I don't know, it's
who knows how long it's going to last.
But practically speaking, I think it's something that we really more have to actively take advantage of.
And I think the more you can combine some of these outreach methods, if you're going to write something for your blog, cut and paste it into Front Porch Forum. If you're doing an event, you write a short press release, cut and paste it into Front Porch Forum. But kind of figuring out how you can maximize your time, because we all have and like I said, this is a lot to do, but the more you guys can combine things, and I mean, I think it took the guy that does my website like 2 minutes. I mean, it was this, and now we have a Twitter account, he set it all up for me. But I think that's the thing that we just need to think, what's the most effective, efficient way to get your message out there and then try to duplicate it in multiple places at once. You're done? Okay.